Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for ABG Business by Avast. Today we're joined by Ryan Valley, who is the Senior Product Manager for all of our products. He's got a very nice presentation giving us an update on the threat assessment. This builds on the threat assessment webinar he gave us in Q1. This is some interesting, updated information on some of the threats. This presentation is being recorded. If you wish to watch it again, just follow the same link that brought you here today and you'll be able to watch it. If you wish to share it with some of your colleagues, just send them the link. They'll be asked to input their email and they can watch the recording as well. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A pod at the bottom. There are a number of us working as moderators today, so we'll be able to answer some of the questions in real time. Others, if there's time left at the end of the webinar, we may be able to clear the deck then. There are a couple of poll questions, so you will hear my voice every once in a while come in through the presentation. So Ryan is going to kick things off for us, and then when we hit the first poll question, I'll introduce it. So Ryan, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good day and welcome everyone to today's webinar, 2017 Threat Assessment. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Ryan Valley and I'm very excited to be able to share with everyone today really an update and a look at the security landscape that we all face in 2017. From an agenda standpoint, there's a few key areas that I wanted to bring up as topics of discussion, and first of which is looking at some of the top emerging threats that are really targeting the small and medium businesses that we all serve and work for today. Furthering that, we're going to learn how protecting your data, and really data protection is and equals business protection. And this is kind of predicated on a little bit of a transition or shift that we're seeing in the market today from once was a very device-centric world, and we're shifting now to more of a data-centric world. And there's a lot of key information and interesting facts that are really supporting that transition, really putting data front and center, and certainly front and center from a security standpoint. Next to that, we're going to look at building a business case for really mitigating security threats that, again, are impacting the small and medium businesses today, and really are finally looking at how to turn those threats into real sales opportunities. So before I move into 2017, I want to take a little bit of look back into 2016. And many of us are looking back at 2016 and really seeing it as the year of ransomware. It is an unfortunate kind of tagline or slogan that we will place on 2016, but ransomware really showed explosive growth. Some of the kind of anecdotes here is really an astounding or really an incredible 638 million ransomware attacks were suspected to have occurred in 2016. That's actually up 167% from 2015. Now, the unfortunate component to that is that over 209 million, now we did normalize the data into US dollars, was paid out in the first half of 2016. So really kind of thrusting kind of that ransomware as a significant impact on all types of businesses, and really not just small and medium businesses, but really all businesses, even consumers, they are really being impacted by the negative aspects of the ransomware. If you did join us in our threat assessment webinar in Q1, I spoke a little bit about, of course, ransomware, but also email phishing. And I wanted to bring that up once again, that these phishing emails, these scam-type emails, are actually now the absolute #1 delivery vehicle for ransomware and other malware. What I'm showing in the chart on the right-hand side is that more and more of these email phishing or phishing scams are driving users to click on the wrong link or open the wrong type of attachment and introduce ransomware into their environment. An interesting statistic here is that 85% of organizations have actually suffered from some type of phishing attacks. I know I see them in some of the general free email, personal emails that I have. I see these phishing types email attacks, and the approach that has always been taken is kind of cast a wide net and try to infect as many people as possible. And what I want to share a little bit today is what we're seeing in a transition here. So focusing on that ransomware and email phishing, But looking at 2017, and much more sophisticated engineering is really going into that. And the component I want to speak to is what's deemed social engineered targeting. I spoke a little bit about that, cast a very wide net, kind of general, get it out there as much as possible, infect as many users and as many devices as possible. That has always been the very traditional approach to email phishing and to actually pushing out ransomware or other types of malware. And it has proved fruitful, but certainly we as users and as businesses are growing our threat intelligence, and we're able to identify this email doesn't sound right, or that attachment it doesn't look to be a part of this email. I shouldn't be clicking on that. So what the response from the hacker community has really been is that they are now employing more advanced techniques to manipulate their targets. There's more and more going into these phishing emails. And they're driving us, essentially, or desiring us to click on that link, or respond and divulge that sensitive information, open that wrong email attachment, or even execute a specific application. As I was kind of going through and reading a lot of the analysts and blog posts and kind of collecting information, of course, on the current security landscape, this social engineering really goes far and wide, and they're using, again, those very advanced techniques. So hackers will create what was deemed an attack persona for a specific type of SMB. Maybe that is a targeted specific SMB, but oftentimes, looking at the vertical itself. But if we, using an SMB as an example, the unfortunate part is, typically our websites contain, and introducing the executive team or directors, on the About Us. There's also oftentimes sample email formats in the Contact Us. So those two pieces of information can be used to really start building that attack persona. Well, there was one component that I was reading where they actually made in a call and accessed an automated company directory, started getting names of different employees within the organization, and of course their departments. From this type of information, some of the scenarios that we're seeing within the space today is responding on behalf of or assuming the identity of one of the executives on the board of directors and contacting. They have the email format, they know the name from the automated directory, and contacted a member of the finance department as an example, asking to wire money over. As a member, or if I assume the identity of a member of the finance team, receiving an email from the board of directors or that executive member, asking me to do something, well, oftentimes, I'm going to respond to that. But this is some of those tactics that are really being used, and looking at more and more advanced ways to really trick us and really, promote those scams. Another component here is what we put on the public domain, what our interests are as a business, what some of the upcoming events or trade shows are coming in, and using that information. If everything is pointing towards, from all the social media, that this business will be attending a specific conference, well, there oftentimes is going to be last-minute, wire transfers of money, or last-minute pass this information, this company, the list of partners or customers that are coming over. So using that type of information, or knowing that type of information, again, the hacker community can build that attack persona and really create, unfortunately, a very compelling type of email scam or scam that will be placed on the SMB. So no longer is it, kind of poor grammar in these phishing emails. No longer is very, dear customer, really being able to do that research and understand, these are real users and this is the real board of executives for that SMB, and using that information to, again, pull off their types of scams. So the unfortunate part here is that these threats are really becoming more and more advanced and more trickier to actually find. If I look specifically at the next generation of ransomware, the unfortunate part is it's not just what we've once known, where traditionally ransomware has restricted users' access to data residing on their workstation and or servers. And that is still true in what we're seeing in here, but now we're actually looking at a combined or hybrid threat, which of course includes the ransomware component, the actual restricting of access to specific data, but in conjunction with that, a denial of or distributed denial of service attack. This really creates, a threat vector that will absolutely disrupt that SMB business. Because the approach here that is being taken is that it's actually restricting access to do business, restricting access to data from both a internal and external component. So being able to impact not only the workstation servers, but as well the websites, web services, and web applications. From this type of dual-pronged attack that's, again, attacking both internally and externally, it really forces us to spread our resources thinner than ever before, because oftentimes priority is placed on the external facing, the web services, the website, bringing that back up, because there is reputation of the SMB that is going to be needed. And even if the time here is to perform or restore that backup for the internal systems, again, we are spreading our resources that much thinner and approaching that. The unfortunate part, or I guess one component I wanted to add to this is if in the event a user is tricked into that scam and clicking on that wrong email or driving to that wrong web link and introduces malware payload, that ransomware payload to their workstation or server, that often what triggers the denial of service attack as well. So as we talk about these, I want to introduce kind of the threat landscape of 2017, but really want to center around, or what we'll get to is the levels of protection that we can still employ to protect us against even these types of hybrid threats that, in my opinion, certainly sound nasty and really is going to create a significant business disruption. The third type of threat that I wanted to speak about is a little bit more of a general component, but through a lot of the reading, a lot of the analysts that we're working through, is that user identities are really placed at the forefront. And there are not necessarily specific threats that I want to introduce here, but where it really boils down to the common factor of all of this is our passwords. This often, that single factor authentication that we know and love as our password, really is that single point of failure. It is truly a threat to the organization in the event that it was mishandled on a post-it note on my monitor here, or on a open text file, or unencrypted text file on my laptop. So these types of single factor authentication is the cause of a lot of different data breaches. That last point, 80% of data breaches are due to, yes, outdated software and exploits, unhardened configurations, and or weak passwords. And there's a lot of, even within the different media here, we see due to weak passwords, a data breach was actually really placed as a threat, or triggered that threat to impact that specific business. And one important component here, and we'll speak a little bit about this coming up later in the presentation, is that myself as a user, in the event that I were to be compromised, I had a weak password, I represent a certain threat to this organization because of the accesses that password grants me. I, as a user, I need access to certain information in the business in order to do my jobs and do my duties. So that in the event that my password is compromised, that data that I have access to represents really what is at risk for the business. But if you look at the executive team or general managers, in the event that their password were to be compromised, well, he or she has a lot more access to a lot more, perhaps even more sensitive data, representing a more significant risk to the organization. So what it really comes down to is putting in place more and more precautions, and we're not seeing yes, we're seeing adoption of multi-factor authentication, but it's not increasing at the rate that it should, not increasing at the same rate as these threats are really impacting businesses. Because what we're finding here is that 60% of users use the same password across multiple services. And there was another study, and this was some time ago, but on average we have about 24 different services, and 24 different passwords that may need to be remembered. And that 24, that's a lot of passwords to remember. You can only hold the shift key so many times, as you're creating these passwords. And that, I think, is what is causing a lot of this password reuse, where we have more and more of these types of services. And again, there has been an increase that we spoke a lot about there. And actually on smartphones, looking at the mobile devices, there was a study. It was interesting. So on a keyboard in front of your, in front of your workstation here, it was about, I think it was 3 to 6 seconds that you're able to input your password. But it was 10 to 12 seconds to input, that same type of password on your mobile device. We're busy, I get it, but the result there is that these smartphones do contain very sensitive business critical data, but are actually not even having the adequate level of protection or the similar level of protection as we see on our workstations, and laptops and that. One other component here is that it's not just a business component. In the event, although maybe it is a business device, that business laptop, the business mobile phone, were to be compromised, it contains a great level of information and oftentimes personal information. So those who actually have been compromised due to a weak password, even in a business setting, are actually 9.5 times more likely to be victims of personal identity theft. Because although the hacker may not be interested in that, they want the business data, they can oftentimes sell that information if, again, found or discovered through compromising that password and collecting all the information that really that password granted them access to. Turn things over to Andrew. I think we have a quick poll question for the audience here.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Wow, that's some great information on the human element, the social engineering, the business email compromise that's bringing some of these new threats and servicing them up. So here's the first poll question. As an MSP, when you're protecting a customer, what is your top tactic? Are you looking to get the data backed up first? Is AV software, is that your go-to? Is anti-spam the first thing you try? Do you disable macros as your top tactic? Or changing management policies? So I'll give this question a few seconds to sit up on the screen. Just hit the radio button that makes the most sense to you and then click submit. And then we'll view the results in just a second. So I'll give you just a count of 2 to type in yours. And then we'll move on. Wow. Ryan, would you care to comment? Is this in line with what you're seeing?
Love to, and really love the way the question was structured, because it can be a tough question, to be honest with you. Choosing that one top, oftentimes, you want to prioritize everything as priority number one. But I certainly agree with the audience here. Data backup is key. It is always going to be that plan B. It is really going to offer that level of protection. Now, one thing I do want to mention, as I was kind of going through and kind of following what's happening in this space, in the data protection component, it was about 70% of SMBs do have a structured, comprehensive a data backup solution. At least 30% of SMBs that don't have that comprehensive a backup kind of structured, to ultimately protect their business. But one anecdote here is that the 70% that do have that, it was about 32% were unable to perform a full restore due to unsuccessful backups, or kind of errors within their backup strategy, and really places backup front and center as certainly a key service that we promote, and we certainly see our partners providing to their SMB customers. Checking on those backups, being alerted, kicking off new backups if ever necessary. Because I agree with the audience here. It is the number one tactic. It is really the one that can eliminate the pain due to any type of attack, whether that even be just typical downtime that has impacted a given device. So excellent information. So we spoke a little bit about kind of what's happening in 2017, what we're seeing emerging, from the social engineered attacks and that hybrid ransomware, and really placing users' identity at the focus. I wanted to kind of bring back some of the threat avoidance strategies that we spoke to, and that poll really addressed kind of the number one, data backup. It's the recovery plan for all critical information. But I also, in the realm of ransomware, want to speak of a few other tactics. And again, we discussed this a little bit in our Q1 threat assessment webinar, but the use of application whitelisting, really allowing, really with insight into what are the applications users need. Well, those are the applications that should be able to run. In part to that, if those are the applications that need to be run, those are the only ones that should be installed, and of course, those should be up to date. Employing a software updating strategy that is Updating applications, I can't say real time, but near real time. Oftentimes, and there was one analyst that I was following here that when a patch was released, that's kind of the moment that the patch was released to address a specific security threat. The duration or time window that we wait from release of that patch to actually install increases our threat window, essentially. Waiting 30 days, waiting 60 days, waiting 90 days, well, we have an expanded kind of risk scenario that we're going to do there. Understandably, that it's always good practice to test our patches. But again, having that type of process in place really ensures that we are updating those applications that, again, users are needing, to conduct their daily duties. Mandatory foundational, if I could say, an antivirus software, scanning the system, always continually being up to date. Restricting the user's permissions or their ability to install and manipulate their systems. The unfortunate truth is here, there are a lot of admins out there. A lot of users have the administrative privileges. And in one sense, a user with administrative privileges can reduce the amount of service requests, change requests for the given workstation because they are given that control. But on the other side of it is, because of that level of control, they can truly impact and negatively impact their workstation, which creates that one service request to be much more of a higher priority, much more impactful to the business, because they really have the ability to introduce new applications, which is going to bring in that malware, which is going to potentially bring into that ransomware and really create a huge scenario that our partners and certainly managed service providers are going to have to come in and address. So again, really always kind of leading with least privileges is the best. Having enough for the users to be able to perform their activities. It's a given, but really avoid enabling macros. From within the email systems. A lot of malicious code can be introduced to systems that way, and of course, unsolicited web links. This is a strategy, and we're going to actually speak about this coming up in a little bit here. But what is an unsolicited web link? How do I know if it's unsolicited? What are the strategies? What are the processes that I or my business have in place to really educate users on what to do and when to see and how to identify an unsolicited web link? So just wanted to kind of bring up again some of the threat avoidance tactics for ransomware. Email phishing, wanted to do the same thing, never providing personal information about the organization, about yourself, and this actually includes some of the structure of the networks. And even, of course, unless you're completely certain that this is the user that is going to be receiving this information. Financial information, of course, given there. And there was actually one kind of trick component or one scenario that came up is that it was a member of the board of directors or whatever in this scenario that has requested from a user some financial information. He or she was meeting with another company or whatever it may have been, and it really created a kind of a hard situation because there was a policy in place that financial information should not be stored and should not be shared, via email. And there was no encrypted email in place, and really kind of created, I guess, a difficult scenario for that specific user. And this is exactly that information that should be known by every user. What do I do in this situation? And that's coming up as a discussion point a little bit later in the presentation here. Not sending sensitive information, specific to the business, of course. Pay attention to URL of a website and actually emails that come in. I almost wish I would have added some of the sample email phishings that I've seen. If you recall, for those that attended in Q1, the threat assessment webinar, there was an Amazon email that actually I had received, and it was having to do with thank you for confirm your order, and there was a bunch of products that of course I didn't buy, and it resulted in I think 157 pounds. I think it was co.uk, Amazon.co.uk, something I didn't buy from. But when I looked at the email address, it actually wasn't, the domain wasn't Amazon. I wish I would have added a few of them there, but really start checking into things. If this, if it doesn't pass the smell test, this doesn't sound too right, start probing into this, and seeing what, where this email or this information is actually originating from. And of course, again, that foundational component of ensuring that your antivirus software is always up to date. Now, when it comes to threat avoidance, I've been kind of dancing around this a little bit, but really the human element. There is a lot of excellent security protocols and security products and solutions in place today. Working with ABG Business by Avast, we have a premier antivirus solution, and the breadth of security solutions that we offer are really there to in place to protect SMB businesses, and really allow our partners to offer that security as a service. So these solutions work today and are in place today, but it really comes back to us. It is the users that can or cannot make unsecure decisions. So I wanted to ask a little bit about, wanted to discuss a little bit about the security policies and safe computing practices that really connect a business security with the user process. So some of the sample questions that I've been gathering here, well, what information in this organization, in your organization, is public versus private? What should be shared? What absolutely cannot be shared? Is that known? What does a suspicious email look like? I just opened an email attachment. I feel it was a virus. Something just doesn't sit right with me. What should I do now? Who should I contact? What should I contact? Should I use my computer? Should I unplug the computer? What do I do? I found this great new application. It does exactly what I want it to do. It's free for download. Can I go ahead with it? If I get that request, I spoke a little bit about that request to send private data through email to a known colleague. What should I do there? Should that colleague have put me in that situation? These are the kind of processes and discussion points that should be included in every security as a service, in every component, as these types of answers or this type of knowledge is that additional layer of protection beyond just software, beyond just technology, but it's really creating a secure culture. I find it much easier to just take my files home, work on them over the weekend here. Is that a USB stick? Am I putting them on my personal Dropbox? What is the scenario I need to go there? Good friend asked for my password. Just quickly finished up one thing before I went on vacation. Should I give it to them? These types of scenarios and these types of questions, we're seeing our partners having the conversation more because SMB organizations, they're busy. They have a job to do. They have their own competitive pressures. They have their own economic pressures. Security cannot be pushed to the wayside. It really needs to be prioritized. And yes, the security solutions that I'm eager to show everyone here today are a component of it. They are a piece to the puzzle, but there is the human element. I think we'll pause one moment. I think we have another poll question, actually.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Actually, on some of your questions, I'm going, I know the answer to that one. I'm not sure what we do about that one. So the poll question is, do you have structured security policies for your customers? Yes, you do. You thought about this. You've got something in place. No, you don't. Or no, you don't, but you've thought about it. You'd like to implement them. Where are you in terms of structured security policies? Do you have them? Do you not have them? Or are you still thinking? I'll give you a couple of seconds to respond, and then we'll pass the results on to Ryan for comment. Oh, phew. Ryan, please take it away.
I threw my hands up. Yes, excellent. Overwhelming yes, 80% yes. And this wonderful news, because there is a lot of organizations that unfortunately do not. And that is what's creating, or I guess enhancing or expanding the threat vector for different types of SMBs. So overjoyed, everyone, to hear that 80% of us participating here today have very structured security policies in place and may have covered some of the questions that I was able to present moments ago. So excellent job, everyone. That's overwhelmingly great news. Now, I wanted to transition here. I guess what we've discussed so far is some of the emerging threats. We did a look at 2016, some of the things that are happening in 2017, some of the threat avoidance strategies. I wanted to speak a little bit or come back to the one comment I made, is that transition from a device-centric world to a data-centric world. And this really is putting data as the goal of all of really the hacker attempts. Botnets aside, they of course they're building these botnet armies, which is solely kind of device access or compromising a device. But if we think back to that hybrid ransomware, which is a combination of a distributed denial of service attacks as well as ransomware, well, that's a component. They're leveraging that type of device access to compromise, again, the ultimate goal of that hacker community being the data. So putting data at the forefront, really wanted to, well, I guess first understand the data. And I don't know, what classifications, make sense for each of the organizations and SMB customers that each of us have here. But one thing that really kind of resonated to me was categorizing the data so I can understand what are the security precautions that should be surrounding this data, surrounding the devices that, or placed on the devices that this data exists. What are the security precautions or permissions that users should have? Does everybody in the organization need access to top secret data? Or is it only the executive teams? Or is it, whom is me? And this type of question allows us to really think at what is the data that exists in the organization, and where does it go? Who has access to it? So some of the classifications that I wanted to just bring up as discussion points here is, first of which, top secret, so highly sensitive internal documents. Some examples here: mergers and acquisitions, investment strategies, very some detailed plans and designs that would be absolutely detrimental to the organization if ever that information were to be leaked. And actually, I want to pause for 1 second. One thing I want to kind of put in our minds here, and only because, unfortunately, I think it happens more times than it should, is we accidentally put someone we didn't intend in the to field of that email. We sent that email. I almost wish there was a poll question around that, or who's raised their hands if you sent an email to the wrong recipient. And it does happen. But if we look at and keep in mind top secret information, if I was sending that top secret information out and I accidentally, added someone that I shouldn't have, maybe it was even someone internal to the organization, but he or she should not have that information, represents a significant security risk. Because again, if you think back, if I accidentally sent that top secret information to someone that shouldn't have had it, and he or she has a weak password, well, now if they were to compromise, that top secret data is now at risk. Not because it's not protected properly and all of that, but I accidentally leaked it to someone internal to the organization. But again, they were compromised, and that was in their access, of what data they have access to. So kind of different scenarios we need to think of here. But back to the risk classification of data. Highly confidential, so they could seriously impede an organization's operation. So accounting information, business plans, sensitive customer information. Think of HIPAA and PCI information. Proprietary, coming to that classification. So these are things that are often unique to the business. So proprietary information. These are procedures, operational routines, project plans, design specifications that really kind of outline how the business operates. Certainly, you'd never want it to get into the hands of any type of competitor. Internal use only. It would be inconvenient if an organization or to the organization if this information were to be leaked, but probably not going to create any financial loss. Internal memos, meetings from meeting minutes, internal project reports, and then of course there is public information. But by having this information or our data classified in this way, we can look again at what the security is that surrounds this type of information. And kind of of course putting the absolute security precautions at the top secret, and then relaxing as we move down the different classifications. But this is also an important component that I feel can be added to that our security procedures, making sure that users know this type of information. If we think back to, I got this email from the GM, he or she is asking for, this very sensitive information, top secret information. Based on that information being deemed top secret, I should not be sending it via email. It's not encrypted email. I shouldn't be doing that. And by the GM knowing this and I as a user knowing this, we can have an honest conversation that no, we need to look at an alternate method to give this to you. Understandably, you need it now, but we need to do that because this it could be very detrimental to the business. So classifying that data can be an excellent component to bring a level setting, to really what data is important to the organization. And if we move to, if we kind of prey upon that information, we look at the business case. Data leaks, what do they mean to an organization? Well, of course, that information can impact the reputation of the business. If I think back to that hybrid type of approach here, or the hybrid ransomware, in the event that I can't get a hold of anybody internally because all their systems have been impacted by ransomware, I can't get to their website, I can't process via their web service, that can impact the reputation of the business. 85%, so actually a study that was done, 85% of people would take their business elsewhere if a company really just lost their data. 47% would take legal action. I guess it depends really on what that personal information was, but really if they're not having the appropriate security precautions in place, and that had to be communicated, we just don't have your company information or your customer information anymore, really changes how that organization can be looked at. So if I'm building a business case here, it is important to the longevity of the organization that the appropriate security precautions are put in place, because again, this can impact the reputation. Regulations doesn't affect everybody, but HIPAA, GLBA, Sarbanes-Oxley, PCI, these standards violations, the penalties can range from 50 to really $250,000 per business, and there are a series of well-defined, I know that there's some interpretation there, but well-defined regulation kind of standards or precautions that should be put in place. And this is certainly a component here, as we build that business case on why different security precautions and security processes need to be in place. Revenue standpoint, of course, this one makes the most sense here. But one study and one statistic found here is that small medium businesses lost more than $7.6 billion as a direct result of virus malware in the first half of 2016. So this is actually not in combination with the ransomware components as well. 80% of the cost of a lost laptop is the data breach. It's the data that's residing on that system that is lost. There was something in I thought it was an interesting tidbit. I didn't work it in here, but in the example of a lost laptop, it was something like 12,000 laptops are forgotten in airports or lost in airports every single week. This is globally, of course, but if that is even, and I didn't want to add it here, but looking at that, it's understandable that 70 million smartphones are lost every year. And think of all the information that is captured on these smartphones, on those types of laptops, really creating a huge data leak, for organizations. And then there was one other metrics here. Estimation states that 1 meg of data costs about $10,000 to restore, or in the event, again, this was critical or sensitive information, can represent a significant revenue loss to the organization. And then there's the component of resilience. In the event that there is a traumatic data breach or data loss for the organization, 74% of organizations that have suffered data loss, well, 32% of those, the organizations, they took 6 or more days to recover. 16% of those organizations actually never recovered their data. And it seems that the threshold here is 10 days. If it's taking 10 plus days for that information to be recovered or restored, actually can result in that business going out of business, or in that business, I guess, filing for bankruptcy or going out of business. So really, again, kind of putting at the forefront data. It is the goal of, unfortunately, our hackers. It is of the most critical assets as business owners and as employees within a business that we work on. We always are manipulating that data. It is really placed as king, and the appropriate security precautions, must be put in place for that level of protection. I think we'll pause one more time, and Andrew, I think we have another poll question.
Yes, and I promise this is the last poll question here. So our question now is, are your customers, are they aware? Are they asking you for increased protection? Yes, they are. No, they're not. Or no, they're not, but they should be. So I'll give you a couple of seconds just to digest those responses. Please click the one that makes the most sense to you based on your customer base. And then we'll move to the results. Then Ryan can give us his comment. Ryan?
This, I guess a little bit. Well, no. This is quite in line. a lot of the different conferences that I've been attending have really showcased security at the forefront. And that's where, I can certainly agree with that, no, but they should be. We as managed service providers and really working as those trusted IT consultants need to, and I'm overjoyed to kind of see that component that we're recognizing that security should be prioritized. And it really kind of plays there. But I don't think the yes, from the, are your customers asking for increased protection? I don't think the yes is enough. And this kind of comes back to one comment I'd made, but there's a series of studies that really kind of justify this, that SMBs are busy. They're not, they have a business to run. Security is not at the forefront of their minds. Although the very chaotic world that we're living in here, with not just ransomware, but just kind of hacker and malware and the proliferation that we see year over year, kind of compounding year over year over year, that education does exist. SMBs are being, I guess not bombarded wouldn't be the proper term here, but are being subject to this type of information. And it's I would have wanted to see that yes a little bit higher, that SMBs are recognizing, or they should be recognizing, that security is the priority. And actually we'll come up to here. I'll steal a tagline that I saved for a little bit later. But security threats are the new downtime. They really impact a business, certainly as with the adoption of mobile and cloud computing and all of that, and these great data recovery strategies that I know our partners, even live on this webinar, exist or are putting in place here. These types of precautions, it should be expanded a little bit more. So there would be my thoughts here, but certainly agree, and I'm pleased to say that we're recognizing this. As service providers, we need to be placing security at the forefront. So in that kind of mindset, a lot of conversations that I'm having with partners and different MSPs kind of globally is the concept here of the sales opportunity, but it really comes down to the trusted network. I think this is an excellent term that really describes what is necessary for SMBs today. They need a coveted, trusted place where they're able to securely compute. So the trusted network, and kind of defining that, is that multi-layered cybersecurity protection. Really there to address the on-site component, the virtualized component, the cloud, and of course even the mobile component of an SMB workforce and of an SMB today. And really what it comes down to is the secure computing. I want to stress tailored security processes. There's not one size fits all. There is different security precautions. There are different shapes and sizes and really very grave differences in some cases between the different networks that we service. Some SMBs opt for the cloud-based services. That creates a different set of challenges, a different set of threats. Some, of course, everything within these four walls, and that's the way it's going to be. And again, kind of tailoring there. So understanding the SMB's mindset and understanding where they're at in kind of maybe there's a security spectrum, understanding where they're at, we're able to really speak and suggest different security solutions that are necessary for their specific business, and really to allow the users to compute as they need, and as they need to complete their daily tasks, but do that in a security component. Here's that kind of tagline, but the malware, ransomware, and data loss, represents disruption, or really, is that kind of new downtime. The security services, the cloud services, aren't subject to the same levels of downtime due to the clustering and Amazon, and really being able to provide that 99.99% of uptime. So it's not the same type of downtime that maybe we would recall of 3, 5, 7 years ago, when everything was on physical hardware on site in a closet, in the given SMB. So security threats, really representing that new downtime. Here's a strategy. So look at the sales opportunity. No business can be 100% secure, and it really, more and more security safeguards and precautions that the SMB agrees to and really puts in place, the security procedures that, and again, overjoyed to hear are in place. 80% of us are placing those placing those security procedures and policies in place for SMBs. It really builds up their security score in a sense. But if I look at, what is the security acceptance of the SMB? Because security does have a cost. And if we look, we kind of think back to how we're categorizing different types of data, that top secret, highly confidential, proprietary, internal use only, and public. How do we relate things back to there? And by bringing up information or having the security conversation with the SMB about what is the critical data? What is the critical procedure or process that is needed to execute that business goal, their business goals, and how can that be secured? We look at the different security services, and this list could have went on, for quite some time, but looking at, without an antivirus, you're actually probably 98% more likely to get a virus. And it's not just a virus anymore. It is that malware, that distributed denial of service attack. It is the ransomware. If I pick off here the anti-spam component, I forget how many billion spam emails are going around each and every month. Without that anti-spam component in place at the organization, it's really a matter of time when they're going to get that email that is going to dupe them. With the more advanced techniques in place, from the hacker community, it's getting trickier and trickier. And this is where these set of precautions really need to come in place here. The exploits, if you recall from early on in the presentation, 80% of data loss is due to unpatched systems, as well as weak passwords. But unpatched systems certainly, is in the top realm here of a true security threat, creating that risk for the SMB, and really is a desired entry point for the hacker community. And again, I can list through here, but there is components here that the more and more security precautions we put in place, the more risk that we take out of the situation. Because one thing that I've been kind of stressing here, and it certainly is known, SMBs are busy. I've said it time and time again, but they want to focus in on their business. They don't want to worry about the downtime. They don't want to worry about the security or the downtime associated to security threats, occurring or targeting their business. So more and more security precautions really place that or reduce that overall risk of the organization. And this, again, comes back to the conversation. From a sales standpoint, conversation that should be in place. What is that risk acceptance, for that? And, antiviruses, I place that at the top for a reason that, it's an excellent place to start. Everybody knows this. 1991, when it all kind of came together for an antivirus. And this is really that foundational component. Kind of starting there. A lot of organizations would not agree. Your busy SMB, of course, is going to agree with you that an antivirus is certainly necessary and needed for their protection. So I wanted to showcase a little bit here that what we have going on from an AVG antivirus. Of course, ranked. Actually, I was very, very pleased here that achieving that 6 out of 6 for the third-party testing in the realms of protection, performance, and usability. I won't read through every component here, but really kind of presenting that foundational security protection that is necessary and really should be built upon and built from that antivirus installed on each and every really asset that is existent within the organization. And certainly, again, as we speak a lot about data, where that critical or classified as top secret data resides, absolutely should be on a device that has an excellent antivirus solution offering that level of protection there. But again, never suffering on performance or, of course, the usability of that data, because again, it's really all about that data, even for typical uses of employees or users within the organization. Spoke about the data backup, and of course offered through AVG Business by Avast integrated backup solutions for disaster recovery. I was pleased to hear that everything, our partners certainly had this in place, and maybe they're leveraging that infrascale backup through Managed Workplace. But having this in place and that comprehensive protection to not only be able to restore the unique file or folder that may have been accidentally deleted, or in the event of a breach, bringing that back, that critical information, and even extending that to imaging, making sure that the device has suffered from a ransomware attack, and no, I'm not paying that ransom because I have a functioning, well-protected image of that device from last known good, and I can have that in place there. But having this integrated component here, again, places at the forefront. And if you recall the statistics there, 70% of SMBs do have structured data backup or comprehensive data backup in place, but it was 32%, if I recall, that are unable to perform a full restore due to errors. Alerting, being able to manage from a centralized location for all of our SMBs is certainly a necessary component in our data security plans. Looking at the patch management here, so certainly, being able to offer patch management, to the most critical operating systems, so whether it be Windows, Mac OS X, and of course the third-party applications, being able to set those auto-approval groups, so it's not something that we need to kind of go through each and every month or every time a different unique patch is made available, whether it by Microsoft, whether it by Apple, whether it by Adobe, or an example of a third-party application. Being able to auto-approve those, but having manual patching policies, and supporting all different operating systems, and again, as I have mentioned, the third-party applications. Multi-factor authentication, I mentioned this a little bit when looking at the overall threats that we're going to see more and more in 2017. And certainly here from ABG Business by Avast, having and offering that multi-factor authentication so that the password is not the only governing factor. It's not the risk point that, if compromised, really impacts a business. Being able to get that text message on your phone, or an email sent to another email address with that PIN code, so that we're able to confirm that yes, it is this user. It is the user that should be logging into this device and gaining access to perhaps that top secret data. But of course, some of the key points here: Active Directory support, really kind of a turnkey provisioning for Office 365, BYOD components. So there's actually a very strong mobile device management and even components of a mobile application management, because this security container really can be used to contain any and all apps that are necessary for that user to perform their day-to-day activities, and really creates the access to these critical applications or business critical applications in a secure portal, and really, again, giving them that multi-factor authentication. And of course, the SAML-based multi-factor authentication when supported by different applications. Salesforce absolutely does. That's relevant to the SMB. Managed Workplace Cloud Care, certainly falling into that as well. The last component here I want to speak about is that content filtering. So the web can be a scary place, and we're all hearing about the dark web and things of that nature. But following these web links, there is a component within our antivirus that does that link scanning. Content filtering is what I want to show here, is ensuring that users cannot go and be dragged to and duped into following down to these malicious applications, that are really placing, again, that device, that user, or even that business at risk. So offering here web protection, from, again, the malicious applications, blocking inappropriate access sites, actually boosting productivity in many situations, and we're not able to go to, really any and all sites that are not business critical for the organization. So I wanted to showcase here a little bit of the security precautions that can be part of the portfolio and really help build up that technology stack to address security of today's SMB. I wanted to touch a little bit on the human element, as really each of us users really are playing a significant role in what security means and what security is to an organization. And it's really our responsibility to be informed, but also take and really enact the most secure kind of processes and decisions, as what our decisions are, or the impact of decisions that we make can have significant impact to the business. And I wanted to share a little bit on some of the emerging threats, but with the appropriate types of security precautions, whether that be software and technologies, and that be processes. We really can live in a secure computing world, despite kind of the threats and malicious attacks that are happening each and around us. So I'll close at this time. I'm going to turn things over to Andrew, but I do want to thank everyone for taking their time out of their day to join us for the 2017 Threat Assessment.
Well, thanks very much, Ryan. I was just going to summarize the webinar in a couple of points as I was taking notes during your presentation. However, you just summarized them for me, so thank you very much. I did want to just alert people to the promotions available through Q2. For our ABG Business Security products, so that's the Antivirus Business Edition, the Internet Security Business Edition, and PC TuneUp, we're offering 20% additional discount off those products for the remainder of the quarter. So now that you have a solution that's going to help bring a stronger defense to your customers, you have a way to affect your bottom line as well. The other promotion we're running for this quarter is a promotion that's coincident with Managed Workplace. So save 33% on a 3-year Managed Workplace antivirus contract. So what that means is that's going to immediately add 33% to your bottom line in additional discount. So those are the two promotions available for the remainder of this quarter. There were no questions that came in. Ryan, you did a fantastic job. You gave us a comprehensive overview of the social engineering, the human element, the business email compromise. You talked about the different solutions. You talked about defensive tactics and strategies. And then you alerted us to the opportunities that MSPs have to go forward and to serve their customers, build those trusted networks, and really beef up that recurring revenue. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to bring the webinar to a close.